Well, good morning. Let's start with the whole reason that we're here at a Master Data Management and Governance Conference, presumably to make the highest quality, most meaningful information available to our user communities, to assist them in making better informed, data-driven decisions. Now, there's two essential things that make that possible. The first, trust in data, which requires a disciplined approach to governance and data management. And two, flexible access to that trusted information for users who require visibility into what's available and skill-appropriate tools for working with the data. Now, it turns out it's somewhat of a challenge to have both of those at the same time, but not impossible if you start with the right architecture. In our session, I'll demonstrate using dimensional insight tools and technology an approach and user experience that combines the advantages of disciplined data management with the flexibility of self-service analytics. Let's look at this first from the user's point of view. As a data-savvy information consumer, I want control over my world, to shape it around what's most important to me. That includes the most relevant information presented in a helpful context, such as this dashboard, which I can personalize to my needs. This one's focused on healthcare, but it could just as easily be finance, manufacturing, or logistics. It's organized around a group of measures, or KPIs, that I've deemed to be important to me. The summary level visualization allows me to quickly make critical observations, such as the fact that hospital admissions are down year over year. I'll probably want to investigate that further. Now, to do that, I'd ideally just want to click on a number or even a chart artifact of interest to gain additional insight into the related categorical or dimensional data, thus the name Dimensional Insight. So now I'm probably curious as to why there's a pattern in this potentially unfavorable trend. For example, what types of patients are behind the decline? I can see right away that the highest volume service line, cardiology, is down 16% year over year. Now, there's probably something more to that. If I look at the trends among admitting providers, I also see that the highest volume admitting provider is down 18%. And I can continue that process through literally thousands of combinations of dimensions. We call that diving the dimensional insight way. So that's all well and good for a specific measure or even a small group of measures. However, my challenge is that I need to know a lot about a lot of different things. So my biggest challenge may lie in understanding the information that's available to me, especially if I'm coming in cold. Maybe I'm new to the organization, trying to come up to speed quickly. Now, it would be ideal if I could have some type of directory or even personal dictionary to help me understand what's available. Yeah, kind of like this. That would allow me to either search for specific measures or peruse the entire set. And once I found something of interest, I could explore it further. So for example, average length of stay is an important operating measurement in healthcare. Now I know that there's a variety of different ways to define it. So before I start analyzing the data, diving around and making assumptions, I better understand what I'm working with. It would be really convenient, in fact, if I could just click on that measure to learn more about it, to gain insight into the metadata, like the narrative description, the business logic that was used to calculate it, the actual calculation itself. And once I've wrapped my head around what it actually is, then I can move over to the data itself and look at things like trends over time. And once I see something interesting, then I can go back and gain additional insight by diving into that dimensional data. Now, if I'm really curious, I might even want to understand how this measures was assembled from its respective data sources, data elements, and business rule transformations. Because, as you probably have experienced, things are never as simple as they initially seem, and the devil always seems to lie in the detail. This is actually the standard definition of our average length of stay measurement. Now, measures exist in a life cycle. What we've looked at so far are well-defined, validated, and deployed measures. They've been rigorously vetted, and that's why we trust them. But they didn't start there. They started with an idea, a need, a requirement, likely shared by multiple people and constituencies. That requirement likely evolved into discussion, debate, and maybe even ultimately consensus. And that's where governance and the ability to facilitate it comes into play. The resulting agreement, definitions, and specifications provides a basis for stakeholders, subject matter experts, analysts, and users to collaborate in defining, implementing, validating, refining, and ultimately deploying each measure. Now, if we could provide a way to organize that collaboration and facilitate it around the life cycle of a measure, there's probably a much better chance that we'll end up with something meaningful and trustworthy. And as a byproduct, we'll also end up with a permanent record of decisions that were made, who made them, and why. And then once the measure is deployed, we can get feedback from the user community, which will provide input into how it can be further refined. Okay, you say, you've got my attention. This is interesting. However, how on earth could you possibly get all the necessary moving parts to work together to make this practical and sustainable in the real world? Fair question. And the answer lies in two things: architecture and automation. Now, with dimensional insight, the architecture consists of both enterprise-class data management and business intelligence and analytics components seamlessly integrated in the same platform. We call that the Diver Analytics Platform. And that's what allows us to combine disciplined data management with flexible self-service. Now, we've added to that architecture an innovative capability that we refer to as the Measure Factory. And as the name implies, the factory automates much of the process around the measure lifecycle, such as integrating the data that's necessary, applying business rules automatically, and then integrating the metadata for the measure directly into the measure itself to support the self-service experience. Now, an important integral part of the Measure Factory are user-appropriate tools, skill-appropriate tools that allow users, such as analysts and subject matter experts who may not be programmers, to play a central role in managing a measure through its life cycle, including definition, specification, documentation, as you can see the metadata here, and the actual calculation and computation behind the measures. The way that we do this is bringing simplicity into an inherently complex process through automation. One of Dimensional Insight's primary goals has always been to make the complex simple, and we think we've taken great strides in that direction with the Measure Factory. Finally, I want to bring you into a user experience that targets the needs of today's data-savvy information consumer. Now, I want control over my world, remember. I want to define it in terms of trusted data. I want it now, and I don't need or want any help, thank you very much. Well, in that spirit, let's build a dashboard starting with a blank slate. First, I'll choose a visualization template that allows me to track information on a day-to-day basis for the most important measures. I'll choose my domain, which is hospital, which defines the set of trusted measures. I'll try to find an existing template from the library, which gives me what I want. This will actually combine the indicators, charts, and tables that are most relevant. And then I'll also select the measures that are most important. Earlier we looked at total admissions. That's certainly an important one. And with a few clicks, I have a visualization that allows me to see what happened yesterday for this measure, how it's tracking over the current month in a 7-day trend. Now, if I decide that that's an appropriate visualization, I could clone it a few more times and add in some additional measures. So, for example, emergency departments or ED visits are an important throughput measure. I'll add that. And then surgical cases are another important measure. Now I have 3 of these indicators with 3 different measurements. All I need to do is lock it in, and voila, I'm done. And I have a working interactive dashboard that allows me to gain further insight by diving into dimensional data. And that's what we consider to be a powerful self-service experience that combines those advantages of trusted information with the flexibility of self-service access. So let's review what we've seen. First, the convergence of disciplined data management with flexible self-service analytics, possible with the right architecture. Trust in data, reinforced by opportunities to explore the underlying dimensional data and easily access the associated metadata. And finally, a user experience that puts the information consumer in control to make well-informed, data-driven decisions with trusted data. Gaining insight by diving into dimensional data. That's the dimensional insight way. Now, that was admittedly a short and hopefully sweet overview, but if you're all intrigued by this, please visit us in booth number 8 to learn more. Hope to see you there. Thank you.